Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 639. Today we're going to talk about Forum Trajanum. This is coming from Stronghold Games in the United States relatively shortly, maybe coming out at about the time you see this video. And it's coming out in Europe from Hook. Now this is a Steffenfeld design. It is a little bit more on the complex side. It plays 2 to 4 players. I've had a chance to play it at some different player counts. I'll talk more about that in the review part. It's got some really kind of interesting, quirky mechanics to it. It's a little bit on the point salad side of things. So let's jump in and take a look at how it works, and then I'll come back and tell you what I think. Okay, so I've got the main board here set up for a 4-player game. And then you can also see here, each player is going to get a main player board, which is double-sided. This side that you're seeing here, where you can see all white icons along the top, and then black icons there, that's kind of like the basic side. But everybody has the exact same board in this case. If you flip it over, you have kind of a mix of these different icons here, and that's going to be different from player board to player board. So you've got this set up here. Now, the main sort of placement area, this is called the forum, that depends on the number of players. So right now it's 4 players. I would take these 2 out if I was playing a 2-player game, and then I would add a 3rd one in, and kind of, it's a little bit slightly different arrangement of tiles. But these are double-sided, and it just kind of randomized little color paths and things like that. And then along the top, you can see kind of double buildings, and then down here at the bottom, you can see single buildings. Now, each of the colors that you see here is sort of corresponding to these different tracks on the board. So see, here's the yellow double building. If I flip it over, it's a single yellow building with this kind of vase building there. And if we look at the single yellow buildings, you have the yellow and then again the vase on the other side. And then you can see you got another stack there. So you just kind of split the stacks in half on the doubles and the singles and kind of put them out. There's not like a limited supply or anything of one or the other. If you run out of all yellows, you can just, if you want to build a yellow, flip that over. It's no big deal. And then over on the side, we've got some different types of cards. We've got these little forum markers here. This is going to kind of denote the number of rounds and so forth. So every round, we're going to draw 2 cards off the foremost deck. Once we go through those, then this will move over to here. Then we'll start drawing out of this deck, and this will move over here. Oops, and then we'll draw out of that deck, and then that will end the game once we're gone through there. On this side here, we have some bonus cards, and there's a variety of cards here. You only ever use 1 for each of the 3 different rounds, and these are sort of end of round scoring bonuses there. This has to do with how you build certain buildings, and this might be a little bit of a collection thing. So you want 2 of these brown assistants, and then also a coin at the end of the round. And you can score these multiple times, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. So a round consists of flipping the top 2 cards of this deck, and then the only thing that you're looking at here are these 2 icons which I showed you on the player boards. So here's the player boards. This has already been set up. You can see those icons along the top and the side. So in this case, we drew this icon here, and then we also drew this icon. So you can see these sort of signify the columns and rows, that you're going to be pulling these tiles from. Now, I've already set this up. You've got a bunch of these tiles here that depict a man on the back there. You have some, 3 to be specific, that depict a woman on that side. So one of the woman tiles you're going to flip face up, kind of at random, and then it's going to correspond to one of these icons here. These are called citizens once these become over here. And these are going to give you special powers and also special scoring bonuses. You've also got this little slide thing that you can upgrade. And you've got some different sort of goods or resources. All of these different worker types are basically resources you're going to use to pay for certain kinds of buildings. Everybody starts with a gray builder, a brown assistant, a white tribune, and a coin. And then everybody gets a different random colored worker. You also start with one of these guys over here. Once they end up in this pile here, and they'll start to stack up over the course of the game, these are going to be what you send to the main board, which I'll talk about. So the first thing we do is we flipped up this icon and this icon here, so we can draw any tile out of this row and any tile out of this column, like so. And so maybe what we'll do, just to be fun, is in this column we have this one, and then in this row we have this one. So these 2 end up being next to each other. What you're going to do is you're going to take and look at these. Everybody's going to do this simultaneously. And you're going to see, oh, okay, so this one would give me a brown assistant and then a white tribune, and then this one would give me 2 color workers. Well, let's say I want to keep this one, so put this one face down right there, and then I will pass this one to the player on my right, and then I'll get one from the player on my left. Let's pretend they gave me this one for now. So then once everybody gets that, they can start looking at them, and then in player order, they're going to choose one of these to actually collect the resources from. So let's just say I chose this one, and I'm going to play this. And then the other one, if it was my opponent's, I'll just put it over there, and then I would take this one that was mine and put that like so. Either way, you put the one that you used that was yours or didn't use but that was yours in this face down pile, and then you put your opponent one face up. If for some reason your opponent can't pass you one because of the configuration of stuff that they've removed, it doesn't allow them to pass them, then you get to actually choose one that they passed you earlier in the game. They'll kind of stack up a supply of these here. So you can say, oh, well, I'm going to pick that one possibly if you want to collect the resources from. So it's always draw two, pass one, get another one, look at the two, collect the resources on it. If it's a citizen like this, of course, instead of collecting the resources, you'll put it over here. Now you always have a choice. So when I got this woman here at the beginning, I could have chose to put her in this row or this one, because you can see they have the exact same icons. And so each of these icons can give you kind of two different special powers. And as you start to unlock more of these, let's say I got this one here, and then I got put my other one over there, I could have two different special powers. Or I can kind of double up on the scoring by having more here. And I'll explain, you kind of strengthens your scoring in that row, the more of these different icons that you have there. So anyway, we've got our tiles. I decided to choose these resources here, so I'll get a yellow and a green worker. I'll take those and just put those down here. And now after collecting the resources from your tile, then you're going to build a building. And there's a variety of buildings to build. If I wanted to build a yellow building, I would discard just the yellow. If I wanted to discard a green, I could do that. If I wanted to do one of those mixture buildings, like so let's say I wanted to do a green and gray, for example, one of these, I discard a green and a gray worker. If I wanted to just do a gray building, I could discard this, just the gray worker by itself, and I can choose one of these gray buildings. And these have different effects, which I'll show you in a second. And then some of these other workers, not necessarily the colored workers, but the gray, brown, and white ones will give you different abilities to kind of mitigate your draw and the kind of different color resources or workers that you have. So one thing you can do here is if you don't like the card of the icon that was drawn, you can discard one of these white workers here to just say, well, whatever, I'm going to ignore that one and just draw whatever I want from anywhere. If you have two white workers, you can choose to actually keep the resources of both tiles that you had, the one that you kept and the one that you were passed, so you can collect extra resources that way. If you have two of these, you can discard them and do that. The brown worker here, let's say I wanted to do a double yellow, and because I don't have two yellows here, I can take and discard two colored workers there, and then discard a brown to change the color of one of those. So if I discarded all three of these, then I can do a double yellow building. Now you can see actually over here, if you had this special ability unlocked, let's say with that there, then on my turn I could do this twice, discard two brown workers just to convert straight into a double colored worker. So I could get that, or if I had this one, I could discard a brown to get a gray and so on. So you can see, you can unlock this, like this one allows you to buy one of these or sell one of these for a coin and so on, kind of in any configuration you want and so on. So all of these different abilities will kind of help you start to mitigate kind of the luck of the draw out there. So again, draw two tiles, pass, play the resources from one, build a building, and that's going to be your turn. So when you build a building, let's say just for fun, we decided to discard the gray and the yellow, and then we're going to build this one here. So you build the buildings actually on your board. So as you clear space here, and when I talk about scoring, it's going to make more sense. You want to sort of try to, draw tiles in a way that's going to help you. So since I did both of these, I can kind of show you both actions. When you do a colored building, you're going to put one of your envoys or two, if you did a double yellow, onto the Trajan board, or excuse me, the forum boards. And when you do a gray building, you're going to take an action on that track that matches that. So let's look at the colors. So I'm going to take an envoy. In this case, I'm going to put it on one of these yellow spaces. Well, what you want to do is surround these eagles. Well, that's one of the things you want to do. At the end of each round of scoring, you're going to do get a point being adjacent, orthogonally adjacent to the eagles. There is a special ability that allows you to score points if you're diagonal. There's another special ability you can get to actually allow you to put a worker right on the eagle. and that's going to give you 2 points at the end of that round. There's another rule here. If, let's say I go to place another worker out, and I got to place it in a green one. There's nobody out on a green, so okay, I can put it wherever. But if I play another yellow building to put out, if somebody has started in a yellow area, I've got to place somewhere in that area, whether it was me or anybody else. So the other thing to keep in mind is there is a special ability, the same one that lets you score diagonal, that allows you to ignore that rule. So I could go start somewhere else out here if I wish. Now the other thing that you're trying to do here, just to kind of jump forward to the end of the game, is build a build chain of these envoys that are out here on these boards. If you have a bigger chain, you're going to score a lot more bonus points. So that's the other thing you want to kind of keep in mind, and then maybe to cut people off. Now, if you do finish a color section, so let's say I get a third one out here, or Billy comes in with his color and cuts me off there, he places there. If you finish it, you're going to look right up there, and you're going to be able to grab one of these bonuses. So you can get one of the white workers, the brown workers, the coin, you can get 2 points, or you can shift your upgrade tile up. And that's this here, like so. So every time you see that symbol there, you're going to start shifting it up. Now you can get an ability to actually flip this, and you can see it moves that little Trajan marker there. So it kind of makes your scoring better. I'll talk about the scoring in a minute. And then it also allows you to jump to trees when you move up, instead of just one space. So this is something you're going to want to keep in mind as well. And there's also an ability that allows you, whenever you trigger this here, to actually do it twice, and then you pick 2 of the different rewards out of that. So that's a little bit about how you're going to be placing envoys out there. Now, when you place one of these gray buildings, again, there's different tracks related to 3 of these buildings, and this one will give you kind of an immediate scoring when you do that one. For example, if you built the gray building with that symbol there, you're going to then move your marker up and take the reward. So if I built that gray building, I would get any color worker I wish, not brown or gray, but any of the other colors, and then the white worker there. If I do it again, I would move up here, and I get the choice of either this reward, which is the gray builder, or any rewards behind it. If I go here, this is the one I was talking about, whoops, that allows you to then place immediately an envoy onto one of the eagles on the board there. Or if you don't want to do that, again, you can choose anything in behind that. So the last thing to do here is once you jump here, and the end of all of these tracks, well, not all of them, 2 of the tracks, has this ability where it allows you to immediately then choose any of these workers here, immediately flip it up, and then collect the reward and put it down into your envoy slot. So once you hit this spot, then immediately this is going to jump over to the Trajan Tower, and you'll put your marker there. Now, whenever you jump to this, or you actually build one of the buildings that has that symbol on it, instead of going up one of the tracks, you're going to score this number of points plus the number of citizens that are on your board. So again, that's the whole turn. There's a lot of complexity going on, but the basic core mechanics are simple. You flip the 2 cards here, you look at the columns and rows involved, pull some tiles off, pass them around, build, then go over here and then build your buildings, and then possibly put some envoys out here, or move up these 3 different tracks, and so on. And then at the end of each of these stacks of cards, we're going to take a look at, let's say this was the one that we had here. This says we need 2 different gray buildings vertically kind of stacked. And so you can score that multiple times. And then also, if you have this as well, you have the 2 brown assistants and the coin, you can score those multiple times if you have multiple sets that you can use. You can't, reuse the building in different sets and so on. And then this one here, if you saw there was little temples on our player board, if you have colored buildings on the corners of those, a little bit more difficult to get, then you can get some points. And then here, if you've sort of scored different colors, which I'll show you just now, and then if you have 2 different colored workers, you're going to get some points. So how do those points kind of configure into the game? So once we, again, go through all the cards, and we're going to look at the different scorings here. If you've uncovered any of these cranes, you can see there's different colored cranes based on the different colored buildings that you can build. If you've uncovered some, so let's say we didn't uncover these, but we did uncover this yellow one here, then if you've uncovered, then you can score all the yellow buildings out there. Now those are going to be worth 3 points each in the first round, and it's going to go down to 2. And then finally, this last bit is going to go on top, and it's going to be worth 1. So you might try to score colored buildings earlier in the game. And then once you score that yellow, and let's say you didn't even have any yellow, but you uncovered that, then you're going to flip this down. So you no longer are going to score yellow for the rest of the game. And then maybe in round 2, you uncover these. So you'll score red and green, and then flip these down like so. So this one here is telling you you've scored 2 different colors of buildings because you've now flipped them to gray, and then also had 2 different colored workers, and you can get bonus points. Now, in addition to scoring the colored buildings, you're also going to score gray buildings, and you're going to score them per row like so. So let's just, for fun, I'm going to clear a few of those off like that. And we're going to do this, this, and this one, just for fun. So you're going to look at the gray buildings. And again, these don't count as gray buildings. These are just cranes. And you're going to score this number of points. So in this case, nothing here. So we're going to get 1 point for that. In this case, we're going to get 1, 2, because these two are the same. You're only scoring for different kinds of gray buildings there. So if we had here this worker, or excuse me, citizen there, we're going to now bump that up from 1 to 2 because you're going to look at these columns here. So if we had a second one here, we would get 3, 6 points here because, again, different gray buildings based on how far along you've kind of moved your citizens along that track, but you're at least getting 1 point for those. So you score the colored buildings, flip these down, score the gray buildings in rows based on the different types of gray buildings. And the next bit you're going to score is, like I talked about earlier with the eagles, anything orthogonally adjacent. If you've unlocked the ability diagonally adjacent, if you've got anybody on there on top of the eagles, you're going to score those. And then you're going to score your largest kind of trail of these envoys, as well as these Trajan cards, these bonus cards, based on where this upgrade thing is at. So again, let's look at this. So you can see we have these victory point numbers here. So if your largest area of envoys on the main board was 6, you would get 4 points. But if you'd moved this up over the course of the game, you would get 7 points. Or let's say you had taken the ability to upgrade that would put the 6 and 7 up there, you would actually get 8 points. So it's good to upgrade this, especially early on, so you can kind of double down on that bonus. Now this little head here is what's going to help you score the bonuses for these cards here. You can see the matching head. And that's scored based on these brackets on top, 3, 5, and then 7. So you may not be able to see that. So you can see, there we go, that little bracket there. So right now, the head here is in this 5-point bracket. So for each time that you fulfill a goal on these cards, either of these goals you can fulfill multiple times, you're going to get, in this case, 5 points, because that's where the head's at. And that's it. So you're going to score in that way 3 times over the course of the game. And then the game, really is about kind of unlocking the complexity here, trying to get some of these kind of resources to mitigate kind of the random draw of that. Being careful what you pass to your opponents. I will say the coins are very important. Anything that has the slide on here is going to be important. Citizens are going to be very important because they're going to unlock all the different abilities like I showed you here, give you the bonuses for the different rows, all that kind of stuff you got to consider. But super simple. Draw 2 tiles, pass 1, use 1, build a building, the end. But there's a way more to it. Okay, so that was Forum Trajanum, or Trajanum, I don't know how to say that word. So let's jump into the pillars of reviews. First is playtime. The box says 30 minutes per player, and that's probably correct. So 4-player game, I think it took us 2.5 hours, but that was everybody's first game to do a 4-player game. And 100% that playtime is going to come down. I played a 2-player, and that was about an hour to do a 2-player game. I haven't played a 3-player yet. So that seems about right. There is some, not AP, but there's some stuff you want to think about in terms of which tiles you take and pass and all that kind of stuff, and which buildings you build. And even just the tiles you take sometimes can be a little bit of a thinker. So the player count, though, is, I don't know. It's a lot of the Fel games I really like are like this, where a Trajan or a Burgundy or a Bora Bora, those are kind of my 3 favorites. I don't really know which player count I like on both of them. I really like 2-player and I really like 4-player, which is why I wanted to play this at both of those counts. Because the 2-player is nice with this one. Let's just talk about this game. The head-to-head kind of drafting tiles back and forth kind of thing, and really trying to sort of starve your opponent if you can, and taking maybe a little bit less optimal tile for yourself, but not, giving them money because they really need money. Oh, and the one thing I wanted to remember that I forgot in the rules is the money is used to sort of feed or pay for your citizens when you score those bonus gray point buildings. And if you don't, you have to flip them face down, and then they can't do their special abilities and you don't get the bonus points. So the money is very important there. So that's one example, though, of something that you really kind of want to watch out for. It's not going to penalize you, but you're not going to get as good of bonuses. And that could effectively penalize you. And so you want to be very careful about what you pass to people. And so since you're always passing right in the game, in a 4-player game, you're really only affecting the person to your right. So that's not quite as impactful, because if the person across the table is getting stuff they always need, then you don't really have a say on that. But the placement of the envoys on the forum boards, the different colored spaces, is a lot more interesting in a 4-player game. Because in a 2-player game, it seems like you can just kind of wall yourself off. You can get cut off a little bit, but you can kind of work your way around it. You do like a double color or something and, jump around it or something. So there is some tension there in the 2-player game. The 4-player game, there's going to be a lot more tension for spaces around those eagle spaces and getting kind of that, contiguous big route, which can give you, a lot of points on that main board. Yeah, the player count, that's kind of the gist of the player count. I really don't know. I like playing it 2 and 4. I would play it with 3 for no problem. But I like the head-to-head aspect of it. I think a little bit more with 2 players. So I think that makes me lean 2-player, but certainly I wouldn't refuse 4-player at all. I still love it at 4-player as well as 2 players. And so what is the game like? Well, it's a Stefan Feld game. So there's a lot of point salad-y kinds of stuff that's going on. It's very reminiscent in that case of a Trajan, I think. I know it's in the title here, but to me, it feels most reminiscent of Trajan as opposed to Bora Bora or Burgundy, and certainly much different than a lot of his other games. It's right in that Trajan vibe because you have this really basic mechanic, in this case and in Trajan, of just draw 2 tiles and then look. And in Trajan, it's like you pick a pile and you just trickle them around your little Mancala. And this is simple. You pick it up, pass it, and then by doing that, you're revealing spaces for buildings, and you want to try to build them in certain ways based on, lots of things. I mean, trying to get colored stuff out on the board, activate the different tracks for the gray buildings, and then also trying to sort of arrange them in such a way that you get the bonuses at the end of the different rounds. So that's all just like baked into one mechanic, build a building, where you've drawn tiles from. So it feels similar to that, where the handcuffs of the game are in that sort of basic mechanic. And then there's just all these different stuff to do on all these different spots, just like in Trajan. There's all kinds of just stuff everywhere to score points on. So that's what's like that. I've never played a game that has like this mechanic where you draw 2 tiles and draft. And then by doing that, where you draw the tiles is, telling you where to build the buildings. So I've really started to really like the game on my last play of it, because like I talked about just previously about, choosing what to pass to your opponent could be huge. You can really kind of starve them for things. They're like, oh gosh, I know, because that they really want like a gray building so they can get that last spot on the gray track so you don't pass them the builder. And you can kind of see if you passing them a citizen. I mean, sometimes you could pass them a citizen and it's not really working with their particular strategy. But I almost feel like default to not passing citizens and money ever, if you can help it. I mean, it's theoretically possible you could draw 2 tiles that would provide citizens or money on both tiles. You're screwed that way. But in that case, you're getting a citizen and money, so who cares, right? Because that stuff's really good. So getting those citizens and unlocking those special abilities to help you mitigate the tile draw, and then getting the money to help you again pay for the citizens is huge. So kind of learning that stuff is pretty interesting. And then sort of learning sort of the arc of the game, because like I said, in the walkthrough, I showed you how you can score the different colored buildings on your board. That's going to be worth a lot more points at the beginning of the game than it is at the end of the game. Though it's not necessarily harder to build those at the beginning of the game either. As long as you have like the right stuff, you're taking tiles and you're filling them up with buildings anyway. So the end of the game, your sort of restrictions on that are going to be about the same as the beginning. So you might as well go after the colored stuff at the beginning of the game. So just kind of learning that kind of stuff and then doing it in such a way to sort of plan for all those bonuses is pretty cool. I would probably suggest, didn't try it, but I would say there's a variant in there where you don't play with the 3 bonus cards. You only play with 1 bonus card at the very end of the game. And so you're only looking at that sort of building configuration for the whole game. So you're really planning for it. Whereas sometimes you can get various cards like that that are sort of contradictory to each other. So once you build for one, yeah, you kind of screwed yourself on the other one. The ones at the end of the game, though, are going to be worth way more points if you've done all your upgrades and stuff right. So that's an interesting arc. But I would say I would find it interesting to play that. And I would maybe suggest that, even though I've not done it, is playing with that, just that one bonus card for the very end of the game. I think that would be slightly easier to kind of take everything in and manage for your first game. Okay, so that's kind of the weird mechanical comparisons to other Felds that it's nothing like. This game's great, though. I think this is a return to form, so to speak. I don't like to say return to form, because it's like putting designers in like a box or a pigeonhole or some nonsense. And that's like the worst of press, right? When you try to like categorize people like that and quantify, and it's like you're doing anthropology on somebody that's creative. But to me, this is, I've liked, let's say last 5 years, I've liked his games, kind of off and on, but for some reason they didn't strike me as much as like Trajan or Bora Bora or Burgundy. This is kind of in that same vein where it feels like a Trajan-ish, or Bora Bora, sort of, not really, but in that Trajan idea, but mechanically is like completely 2 separate games. So I'm really kind of excited to get this and play this more and more and more. And I think this one's going to stick around in the collection, frankly, because it's got that same sort of, dilemma and that same kind of vibe of crunchiness and just, struggling to make the right call. And at the point where, a lot of Euros are like puzzles, right? So it's like puzzle, 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 puzzle. And you're not too interactive with other players. But I felt that that's often been, for me, sort of a neglected bit of Feld stuff, where you actually are a little bit more interactive as you learn the game over time, and starting to deny and block and stuff like that. And this has, I think, a lot of that in the area control and in the way that you draft the tiles and so on, and work different tracks and different abilities and things like that, and try to go different paths to victories to kind of stay out of each other's way and all that kind of stuff. So there's some interaction, I feel like, that's baked into here after everybody's kind of caught up to it. So I definitely highly recommend it. If you're like a Stefan Feld fan and you've liked his last work and you're really into that kind of point salad, number crunchy, just kind of brain bender for the sake of brain bending, definitely take a look at Form Trajanum or Trajanum. Yeah, high recommendation for me. If you're like into the Feld stuff, if you're like one of those, I've ran into a few people like they hate Feld games and stuff. Like, no, probably you could pass on this. I would give it a shot because I like Feld. I recommend Feld generally. But definitely if you're a Feld fan, this is a good one. Take a look. Thanks.